Okay, guys, today we're going to talk about some progressive era presidents. We're going to start with William McKinley and go up through President Woodrow Wilson. And we're going to mostly talk about their progression through this era. So here's William McKinley. He was first elected in 1896, took office in 1897. We mostly know him from our discussion about the Spanish-American War, in which he was president. Two big things to know about him are he supported high tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods. He did this because he believed it would help the American economy. And he also supported something called the gold standard, which backed all U.S. currency with our actual gold. This is opposed to bimetallism, in which silver was supposed to also be included. Now, he wound up switching vice presidents for his second term. We talked about this previously because his first vice president from his first term had died, so he needed a new one. But shortly into his second term, he was assassinated by an anarchist named Leon Czolgosz. This was within less than a year of beginning his second term, making his vice president, Theodore Roosevelt, president of the United States. So Theodore Roosevelt serves out the remainder of that term. It's effectively a whole term of office, and he runs for re-election in 1904. This is going to be significant because he will become the first vice president to have ever won their own term of office when they took over for a previous president having died. No other vice president was able to get a term of office for themselves if they got the office because the president had been assassinated or died in office. Theodore Roosevelt's square deal policies that we talked about a few weeks ago helped propel him into an easy re-election in 1904. So that takes us then to the election of 1908. Having served effectively 2 full terms, Theodore Roosevelt chose not to run again. He said that since George Washington stepped down after 2 terms, he would as well. So he said that if you want to vote for me, you should vote for William Howard Taft. He was basically the appointed successor of Theodore Roosevelt. And meanwhile, the Democrats nominated William Jennings Bryan for the 3rd time in 4 elections. He ran against McKinley in 1896 and lost. He ran against McKinley in 1900 and lost. He took off 1904, but then came and ran against Taft in 1908. The slogan for the Republicans was "Vote for Taft this time. You can vote for Bryan anytime." Taft easily won the election of 1908. Now, some things to know about William Howard Taft. He cautiously pursued a progressive agenda. He didn't go full force into it the way that Theodore Roosevelt did. He did really support the idea of busting trusts. He busted 90. Even though Theodore Roosevelt is known as the trust buster, it is William Howard Taft that did the majority of breaking up these massive corporations into smaller groups so that they no longer monopolized an industry. He wanted lower tariffs, which angered many progressives when he signed the Payne-Aldrich tariff, and it only slightly moderated the tariffs. Progressives wanted to significantly reduce tariffs. He also allowed his Secretary of the Interior to remove 1 million acres of reserve land. This was that reserve land that we talked about under Theodore Roosevelt's conservation efforts. And also there's the undying myth that he got stuck in a bathtub. This probably did not happen. While Taft was a large man, he was basically mocked by the other side for this. It's one of those things where a story was kind of said as a joke, and then people repeated it enough, and then everybody thought it was true. The image you see here is of 4 workers installing an extra large bathtub into the White House during remodeling during Taft's term, which helped add to this myth. So Taft's major failing of his presidency was not being able to hold the Republican Party together. Ever since Roosevelt left office, it started to split into 2 sides. There were the progressive side of the Republicans that wanted change, and the more conservative side of things that did not want change. They wanted to keep things as they were. And Taft was a big supporter of the Speaker of the House, Joseph Cannon. Joseph Cannon was on the conservative side of things. He did not approve of progressive bills. As Speaker of the House, he had the power to ignore them and not let them hit the floor. Progressives and Democrats worked together, so the progressive Republicans joined forces with the Democratic Party to take a lot of power away from the Speaker of the House. And by 1910, in the midterm elections, the Republican Party was falling apart. They blamed the Payne-Aldrich tariff for rising costs of goods. They believed that Taft was against conservation, and the Republican Party lost control of the House of Representatives. This is always an indicator of how the president is doing, is what happens to the House of Representatives 2 years into a president's term. So the party begins to split. Roosevelt, who'd been off on safari, killing as many exotic animals as he could, went and toured the river, the rivers of Brazil, nearly died down there. But he comes back, and he's supporting a concept known as New Nationalism. This was basically the idea that the federal government's power should be used for the welfare of the people. And he decided, I'm going to run again. In 1912, he is going to challenge Taft for the Republican nomination. We talked previously about getting the nomination to be the general candidate. Well, Taft, as president, isn't guaranteed that. He has to earn it. And Roosevelt tried to get it from him at the Republican convention, but Taft, through some questionable political maneuvers, stuffed the convention with supporters of himself, and he wound up securing the nomination. So Roosevelt said, fine, I'm leaving. Anybody who wants a progressive agenda, come with me. So they start a new political party called the Progressive Party. They nominate Theodore Roosevelt as their candidate, and Roosevelt runs as a third-party candidate for president in the election of 1912. So the Progressive Party became known as the Bull Moose Party. This nickname kind of got its start. I told you the myth about the bathtub. This one's not a myth. Roosevelt was going to give a speech when an assassin from a man from his days as police commissioner of New York City approached him and shot him in the chest, point blank. And it went through a steel eyeglass case, through a 90-page speech, and lodged into his chest. Roosevelt then wrestled the would-be assassin to the ground, and when security pulled him off, Roosevelt spat into his hand, saw that there was no blood, and decided he was healthy enough to go give his speech, and did. At the end of the speech, he opens up his coat and says, "You may not be aware, but I've just been shot," as his shirt is covered in blood. It says, "But I'm as fit as a bull moose," giving the party its nickname. And as you look at what the platform of the party, the Progressive Party, supported, you'll see it's all the stuff we've been talking about this unit. Direct election of senators, initiatives, referendums, recalls, female suffrage, shorter workdays, minimum wage, laws against child labor, regulation of businesses. This is the progressive agenda. So when it comes down to the election of 1912, the Democrats nominate Governor of New Jersey Woodrow Wilson. he started embracing a progressive platform, very similar to the Progressive Party's platform, and he called it New Freedom, very similar to Roosevelt's New Nationalism. And his motto was, don't interfere with your enemy when it's destroying itself, because the split between the Republicans and progressives turned nasty. Taft calls Roosevelt a dangerous egoist, basically saying he's so egotistical he's going to put the whole country in trouble. And then Roosevelt very maturely responds by calling Taft a fathead with the brain of a guinea pig. Meanwhile, Eugene Debs runs as a socialist as well. So there's 4 major candidates running for the election of 1912. The split in the Republican Party made it so that the Democrats easily won the election of 1912. It's similar to in 1860 when the Democratic Party split over the issue of slavery, that a Republican, Abraham Lincoln, was able to win in 1860. Not only did Wilson win, he really won. He only received 42% of the popular vote, but as you're all aware, the popular vote doesn't get you elected. The electoral vote does. And Woodrow Wilson received 435 electoral votes, to Roosevelt, the third-party candidate, getting 88 electoral votes, with President Taft only getting 8 electoral votes. And then Eugene Debs, he shows up with a big old goose egg and gets 0. So here's a look at the electoral map in 1912. You can see that Wilson, he won all of the blue-colored states, getting their electoral votes. Roosevelt is the lime green, getting their electoral votes. And Taft is the salmon color here with their electoral votes, with Eugene Debs getting all the states that are colored yellow, we'll say. All right, so guys, that's all the information I have for you for this today. What I would like you to do now is go and complete your assignment that goes along with it. It'll be under W12.A1, election of 1912, check. All right, have a great Thanksgiving, guys. Hope to see you next month.